So I think there's a couple different things. I think you got to have a standard. I know when I was running my team, there was a time where I was running a high performing team. We didn't talk about this. So my best year, I was number 38 out of 45,000 realtors in the Phoenix market, right? So there was a time where I was running a high performing team. When I was doing that, I was paying for all the marketing, TC, signs, photos, whatever, right? In that model, I was paying the listing agent 35%. What did they have to do? They had to go out there, get the business, and do the Tuesday update calls, right? That's basically what they had to do. Buyer agents, we paid them 50%. They had to be out there, and man, showing sucks.
Hi everybody, Jose Luis Morales here. Welcome back to another episode of the Morales Group Show. Today we have the one and only Mr. Steve Trang himself from Real Estate Disruptors. And today, Steve is going to be talking to us about his sales training program. So the reason we're talking about this program is when I searched the name Steve Trang, sales training program was the first thing that popped up. So I'm imagining a lot of our viewers want to know a little bit about his program. We're going to be talking about how to hire good salespeople. We're going to talk about how to train them, how to compensate them, how to keep them motivated. This is an episode that you want to watch to the end. Steve Trang, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad. I'm honored to be here with you.
I love it. I'm excited as well, too. So for our viewers that don't know who Mr. Steve Trang is, who is Steve Trang? And then how did you get involved in real estate sales training?
I don't know how far back you want to go, but if you want to go all the way to the beginning, I am an immigrant, right? Came here. If we go back far enough, I'm a capitalist at heart, and I'm an entrepreneur, right? I love business, and the reason why I love business so much is we come from a long line of entrepreneurs. My grandparents are merchants on both sides, but they were in China, and communism took over, so all the entrepreneurs had to flee because, some charismatic guy says, all the haves are taking advantage of the have-nots, so they had to flee, lost everything, rebuilt everything in Vietnam. Communism took over again. They fled. And as they fled, my parents fled. We were in the ocean, harassed by pirates, harassed by some military. And eventually, we were picked up by an Italian Navy ship. I was born in a refugee camp in Italy. Came here when I was just a baby. And so if we talk about this journey, even though you and I are both in real estate, I am more passionate about entrepreneurship than I am about real estate itself. Real estate is just a vehicle for entrepreneurship. So then how do I get into sales? I think just because you have to be in sales if you're in real estate. I started off as a realtor, and I thought that it would be really easy. I was an engineer. I did really well in school. So I thought I'm smarter than all these realtors. It should be easy. Should be super easy to succeed in real estate. That was not true at all. Not even close to the truth. You got to have people skills. You got to have social skills. You got to learn how to interact with other humans. And so with that, I had to get really good at sales if I was going to survive in the real estate world.
It's funny because when I got into real estate, I imagined that all of a sudden, all my friends were just going to start calling me and say, I heard you got your real estate license. I want to work with you. And it didn't.
That's too. It didn't happen. Not the exact opposite.
So we had to learn how to sell. So let's get right into it. Let's start off from the beginning. If you're going to hire a salesperson to work at your company, what do you look for whenever you're looking for good salespeople?
So let me tell you what I'm not looking for anymore. Because here's what I used to look for. I used to look for young hustlers, people that were hungry, people that, want to make a lot of money. That's who we used to hire. And it worked, but turnover was really high. And we had to teach them a lot of life skills. We had to teach them, for example, when you go out drinking, make sure you get enough water so that you're not still hungover on Monday, right? We had to teach them responsibility, going to bed at a reasonable hour so you can be productive the next day. And so that's what we used to hire, and it was like herding cats. And you might have heard that expression if you're managing salespeople, especially in real estate. So who do we hire now? We hire people with a track record of success. We hire people that look a little more like you and me, right? A little bit more seasoned. They've got responsibilities. They got obligations. They got bills to pay. Because, when we were hiring the young hustlers, what did they have? They had their, car payment of like $300 a month and their apartment of like $1,200 a month. Mm-hmm. Right? That was it. So if they didn't do any sales, like it wasn't a problem. But you hire someone who's got a nice car, whose wife's got a nice car, who lives in an awesome house, who has to go to private school, or their kids are in hockey or volleyball or some other club. Guess what they've got? Expenses, obligations. They need to make sales. And look, when I had the young hustlers working for me, I had to be like, Jose, like, what's going on? Like, why are you not making your phone calls? Mm-hmm. Now, when they're not making their sales, they're hearing it from their wives. And now they're coming to me. It's like, Steve, I need more leads. Like, well, what's going on with the leads you got? Like, let's figure out how you can get sales from the leads you got. And I can coach them up on how to get better on the phones, but they're not afraid to make calls. So it's a slightly different attitude.
So it's almost like having a reason or a need versus a want. Like they're like, I need to succeed versus I want to succeed.
Yeah, it's something very different. Like we buy a lot of houses, right? Mm-hmm. And with us buying houses, we find sellers that need to sell, not want to sell, right? If you want to sell, go with a realtor. It's great. If you need to sell, well, I can buy your house. I can close fast, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with salespeople. If you want to make a lot of money, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't suck when you're not doing sales. Mm-hmm. When you need to sell, you have no choice. Just think about all of us as business owners. When our back was against the wall, how well did we operate? When our back was against the wall, like, watch out, we were a cornered animal. Well, you got to have salespeople that need to sell because now their back is against the wall and they will take action. They know they have to take action because what's the outcome? What's the consequence if they don't? It's going to really suck at home.
It's funny, Steve, because on my second property that I ever bought, I opened up escrow as a short sale, gave me 6 months. I didn't have all the down payment. I only had like 30 of the 80,000. So the next 6 months, I produced more than I had ever produced because I had something to produce for. So I did want to ask you, like, so aside from young or people that are a little bit more seasoned, does introvert or extrovert matter at all?
It absolutely matters. So when you're running a smaller operation, you don't have systems, processes, sales processes, and you're kind of still like a gunslinger. You want to hire extroverts because extroverts can sell. Extroverts naturally can sell, right? If I say, hey, here's a lead, they want to go look at this house, go show them that property, get it under contract. An extrovert can go make that happen. The challenge with extroverts is that they're great at sales inconsistently, meaning that they will have these massive roller coasters. With introverts, they're not going to be shining stars. They're not going to be stellar. They're not going to be people that you're going to write to mom about, okay? But what are they going to do? They're going to be consistent month in and month out. And the reason why is that they must have a process. And because they have a process, they will get consistent results, right? If you look at my understanding, I can only speak for myself because I'm more introverted. If according to what you read, extroverts, they're hearing what the other person's talking and they can't wait. They can't wait to get their next word out. They can't wait to reply. I'm going to give them this great line, right? Or they might be thinking about something else and they're not present at all. Introverts tend to be more present. They tend to listen more. And because they're listening to the other person, they can respond exactly as needed to what the person just said. They can mirror. They can actually respond with the right answer to that question. They could try to understand what the question meant. So because as an introvert, you don't have this need to win this argument. You don't have this need to answer this with like a zinger. You can actually connect more and build more trust. I think extroverts tend to win more with rapport. Introverts tend to win more with connection and trust. I think another thing too, and I can only speak for myself here. As an introvert, one thing I had a problem with was energy. And what I mean by that is I can sit down with a homeowner and talk about the business and talk about how we're going to sell their home. I can connect and build trust with the homeowner, right? But when we're showing houses, you need to be excited. You need to be so happy to be there and like talk about, man, can you believe this kitchen? Can you believe how awesome this master bathroom is? Extroverts are going to be better at that, all right? Because they can project all that energy, all that excitement. I'm not an energy and excitement person. I'm about business. Here's how I'm going to get you, Jose, more money for your house. Here's our plan. Here's how we're going to do it. I can connect on trust, but that relationship part where I got to get you excited, that's going to be more of an extrovert's advantage.
Got it. How important is trust in a selling process? And then what are ways to build trust with other human beings?
I think trust is absolutely paramount. Let's just say, God forbid, you've got diabetes, right? You go to the doctor's appointment and say, Jose, this is really bad. We're going to have to amputate. And like they've done the blood work, they've done the x-rays, they've done the MRIs, they've examined everything. You're going to need to amputate. You're not going to say, doc, I don't really like you very much. I'm going to go talk to another doctor. No, you're going to go with his advice because you trust him. Same thing here when you're selling a house, when you're working with a homeowner. They need to trust that you're competent and that you care. And the way we build that trust is by actually listening to them. I know that sounds crazy. Actually listen to them and validate their beliefs. Not agree, right? We don't agree with their beliefs. We validate, meaning we listen, we acknowledge, we demonstrate that we understand their position. And so if we can demonstrate better that we understand their position, we're going to more likely earn their business. And the way we validate and demonstrate we're listening is by asking carefully crafted questions. What I used to do, because I was in a coaching program a long time ago, right? It was a great coaching program, but they didn't teach sales. So we had like this awesome listing presentation, right? Let me show you how I'm number one, how I sell houses for more money than everyone else, right? And it was factually accurate, but it doesn't matter, right? I can sell houses for more than anybody else. My days on market were lower than anybody else, right? So I can show you statistically why I am a better realtor than another realtor, right? I can show that with a homeowner because A, I was, highly competent, but B, I could take that competence and demonstrate it using MLS data into a listing presentation. Mm-hmm. All I did there, and I show them like, the Matterport cameras, the drone cameras, how we take all these photos, and I get all these views on YouTube, on Facebook, because we got to a point where we're, doing video promotions. I'm going to put it in the newspaper, this and that. All we did was we were doing what we call features and benefits presentations. Mm-hmm. Let me show you, Jose, how cool I am, how good I am at my job, so that you'll work with me. That's not what homeowners want. So now we're going to ask different questions. Hey, Jose, when you figure out which realtor you're going to go with, what are some things that are really important to you? What are some characteristics? What are some good experiences you've had? What are some good sales experiences you've had? What are some bad sales experiences you've had? How would you know that I'm doing a good job for you? What are some things that are really important to you about the realtor you work with? And if we can ask all those questions, and then when we go to show them how we're going to get their home sold, and make sure we check each one of those boxes, do you think we're going to earn their business?
Of course.
Right? Because what did we just present to them? Their solution. Mm-hmm. What they have decided that they wanted before you even showed up.
Instead of just, hey, this is what we're going to do for your property, which I think is completely spot on. What I wanted to ask you is, in Steve Trang's words, how would you describe a good salesperson?
A good salesperson is a person that is highly empathetic. Mm-hmm. They can understand where the person's coming from without having to feel it. There are people that are very sympathetic. I think sympathetic can come across as fake. Whether you mean it or not, it can come across as fake. Empathetic, you need to genuinely understand them. You need to be an active listener. You need to be paying a lot of attention to what they're saying. Mm-hmm. So you need to be very present. You need to be extremely assertive. One thing we preach really hard is that we don't push for yes. We push for a yes or a no. And what I mean by that is I'm going to keep pushing to figure out whether we're going to do business together or not. But I'm going to find out at the end of our appointment together whether we're going to work together or not. I'm not pushing for a yes, because if you push for a yes, this is aggressive. And people don't like aggressive because aggressive comes off like commission breath. Mm-hmm. I'm pushing assertive. Hey, look, I know I'm good at what I can do, and I'm extremely confident I can help you. And all I want to figure out today is whether you and I should work together or not, whether we're going to be a good fit. Because if we're going to be a good fit, let's rock and roll together. Let's crush it. Let's sell your house for some stupid amount of money. Mm-hmm. Aggressive is me pushing you for a yes and me refusing to walk out of the house until you sign the contract. I think I'm more like the Grant Cardone, attitude. Someone out there's got my money. I'm going to go get it. And that's not really our attitude. Our attitude is of service. That's the other one, service oriented. I'm here to help you. Again, I'm good at what I do. What I want to figure out is whether I'm the best realtor for you and whether you're the best homeowner for me. Because guess what? We don't work with every seller either. We work with sellers. We work with sellers. We run into sellers who want to negotiate our fees. Mm-hmm. We run into sellers who are unreasonable. We run into sellers who believe their house is more valuable than what Zillow says it is, right? We walk away from these appointments because for the longest time, and I've seen so many realtors violate this, there are so many realtors that want to get listings. Listings don't pay the bills. We want to get listings that will close. We want sellable properties. Mm-hmm. Getting listings, what happens when we get an overpriced listing? It sits on the market, right, for 6 months. Let's just say hypothetically you do a 6-month listing. Sits on the market for 6 months. Every Tuesday, because when we used to do the follow-up calls. Yeah. Every Tuesday, hey Jose, here's how many showings you got, blah, blah, blah. And what happens? Why isn't it selling? What's going on? What are you going to do now to sell my property? So I got to put up with 6 months of abuse because you won't price it right? And then what also happens with someone that wants to negotiate their fee and wants to sell it for more? They're unreasonable when it comes to repairs. Hey, Jose, the buyer walked through, they did an inspection, and look, the AC is supposed to have a split of 18 degrees. It's got a split of 6 degrees, right? So it's just not blowing cool air. And the homeowner is like, it blows fine for me. No, if they want to buy this house, they have to fix it. But they only ask for one thing on the inspection. They don't care that the roof needs to be replaced in 3 years. They don't care that the paint is peeling in the backyard. All they want is for AC to work. It's really hot. It's August. It's really hot right now. They're like, I don't care. So sellers that are difficult from the beginning, we'll walk away from those appointments because it doesn't help us provide a good experience for all the good homeowners that deserve our attention.
I love it. Now, let's go back a little bit to the hiring process. Is it different? Do you look for different things when you're hiring acquisitions versus disposition agents, or is it the same type of profile?
Yeah, we're looking for different profiles. So acquisitions is going to be more transactional. And I look at this kind of like with listing agents. Acquisition managers, listing agents, disposition managers, buyer agents, I look at them very, very similarly. So if we're looking for acquisitions or listing agents, I'm looking for a high A, someone that's going to be more dominant personality, right? I want them to be socially competent, but I don't want them to be high I personality types. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I'm not looking for high I personality type is because high I personality types tend to want to be liked more often, right? Other people's opinions of them is more valuable. And if other people's opinions are more valuable to them, it's going to be harder to have the difficult conversations with a homeowner. I want someone that's more driving, right? Again, I'm not driving for a yes. I'm driving for a resolution at the end of an appointment together, whether it's a yes or a no. So I generally like, captains, some venturers, some mavericks, individualists like you and me, right? I think these are more prone for acquisitions or listing agents. But on the flip side, buyer agents and disposition managers, this is more relationship, right? We need to like each other more. It's more important that we like each other. Acquisitions and listing agents is more important that you trust that I'm competent and I can get the job done, right? Because, look, I've had so many homeowners that I've worked with that they were not the nicest people, but we got the job done, right? But on the buying side, again, if I show this house, Jose, can you believe this view? This view is breathtaking, right? I can't even fake this, but you got to bring this energy and excitement into the conversation. Dispositions, you're creating long-term relationships so people are going to buy your deals.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to build long-term relationships, what people think of you actually is important, right? You want them to actually want to pick up the phone when you call. So if you're a higher I, when you call people, they're more likely to want to take the call. This is probably going to be a pleasant conversation. If you're a high A, which is a strong D, you think about prototypical high D. For those that don't know, as when we're talking about the disc, high D prototypical. It's Donald Trump, right? He's polarizing. You're not gonna have like no opinion of him. You're either gonna love him or hate him, right? But that's a strong personality. High I is gonna be more like Kevin Hart, Robin Williams, right? These are more bubbly personalities. These are people that are better for showing properties or selling properties that your team has under contract.
I love it. I love it. And then just so people understand some of the profiles that you discussed, like Captain, Maverick, where do those profiles come from? And what does it mean that you're a Captain or a Maverick?
Yeah, so these come from Predictive Index. Predictive Index is what we use as a tool. We won't bring you in for a first interview until we've done a Predictive Index.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of realtors, they use the disc profile, which is great. Predictive Index is just a more advanced version of the disc. So, like disc, you're looking at, is this person high D, high I, high S, or high C? That's generally what you're looking for a disc. You might see like this person D, I, ID, and so on. With a Predictive Index, we're measuring exactly where your D is, where your I is, where your S is, where your C is, and then where they are in relationship to another, right? So like when I'm talking about a Maverick, this person is a D, then I, then S, then C. It's almost like a straight line. Mm-hmm. If we're talking about a Captain, we're talking about someone that's a high D, high I, very low S, and then C is somewhere around the middle. Mm-hmm. So they're, how do I put it? They're more detail oriented than Mavericks, right? If we're talking about venturers, this is just a high D. That's all they are, right? That's just a high D. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm thinking probably more like Trump. You like him, you don't like him, it doesn't even matter, right? Their eye is not very high. Individualists, this is where I'm talking about, like, Jose and I, we're the odd ducks in the world. There's very, very few individualists. It's someone that's a very strong driver who also wants people around them to be happy, right? So usually, if you're talking about, again, captains, mavericks, adventurers, these are people that are drivers, and if people don't like it, that's their problem. Mm-hmm. With individualists, I want us to win. I want us to win at all times, right? It's us against them versus the other personalities, more like it's me against the world.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe, Steve, that good salespeople are born or made?
I think that good salespeople, excellent salespeople, can absolutely be made so long as they want it. But at the same time, extroverts do have an advantage, right? Mm-hmm. I think that if you look at the ingredients that are necessary, I think extroverts have the advantage in that they have more. They can transfer more emotions. But at the same time, introverts, if they can demonstrate, they're naturally better listeners. If they can really work on that listening skill, they can get more sales. So I think in the grand scheme of things, extroverts have an advantage if we're selling items, if we're selling products. But introverts have the advantage if we're selling services, because when you're selling a service, you're actually selling yourself, right? Like, I'm selling me. If I'm selling me, then I can, as long as I can demonstrate I understand your position, you're going to go with me, even if I'm not the highest or the cheapest, right? Even if I'm not the best priced, because you trust me, you're more likely to go with me. So if we're selling a service, I think introverts have the advantage. If I'm selling a watch, a car, a vacation package, I think extroverts have the advantage.
I love it. I love it. So let's talk about like training. This is the part I think that where most of our viewers want to know. I knew that you knew a lot about hiring good salespeople because obviously you talk to a lot of different business owners, and obviously you run a sales organization as well too. What are some of the stakes that you see as it relates to onboarding and training salespeople?
So I think some of the biggest mistakes is we bring in these salespeople, we give them like a manual, we give them like, here's our sales process. All right, go figure it out. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't work. I was having a conversation with Eric Brewer yesterday. We were talking about like there's like 5 different levels, and this is out of the book Gapology, right? So the first one is they have to be aware of the training. They have to know there's training there, right? And then they have to learn the training. That's step 2. And step 3, they have to commit to the training. They have to commit to the process. And this is one of those things that's really hard, especially we're talking about earlier. A lot of those profiles we're talking about tend to be non-compliant, right? You have to commit to the process. That's probably the part that gets missed a lot. Because I'll say, hey, Jose, here's the training. And then we do call reviews. And I'm like, Jose, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? It's like, oh, I didn't feel like it. It's like, that's not how this works, right? Mm-hmm. We have an optimal sales process. Let's follow the optimal sales process. So step 3 is commitment. Step 4 is testing it or feedback, so role playing it. And then step 5 is excellence, right? This is habit. I don't have to think about it. It just comes, right? You see this in sports. If you have to think about what you're going to do, you've already lost, right? It has to be muscle memory. So step 5, when we're talking about in this training, is getting to a point where you don't have to think about what to say. It's already come out because you've mastered your craft. And I think most sales organizations end somewhere between step 1 and step 2. They don't even get the commitment to following a process.
I love it. So you said optimal sales process. What is the optimal sales process in your view?
The optimal sales process does a few different things. First, we have to set the proper expectations from the beginning of the appointment. And the reason why this is so important is that a lot of people are tire kickers. They're trying to collect information, right? This is the reason why when you call a new internet lead, oh, I'm just looking, right? That's like typically their first answer. Mm-hmm. It's just like when we walk into a store, hey, can I help you? I'm just looking, right? It's not true. You're there to buy something. So, but most people are in the information gathering stage. And so when you show up, and they're in the information gathering stage, but you're there to win some business, there's a giant gap, right? So we got to set those expectations properly from the very beginning, because if you don't, then when we get to the end, you're more likely to get, I need to think about it. So we need to set the expectations. Hey, I'm here today to, figure out whether there's going to be a good fit for us to work together or not. Either way is okay. If you don't think we're a good fit, would you feel comfortable telling me no? If I figure out this is not a good fit for us, would you be okay if I tell you no? If it does seem like we're a good fit, then what that means is we're going to commit to working together today, right? There's a much, much kinder, more professional, courteous way to say it. That's just a quick summary of what it is. So setting the expectations from the get-go. And then after that, understanding the motivation. Again, this is where most realtors will talk about features and benefits. Or if I'm showing you some houses, right? There's a buyer consult. Hey, Jose, how many bedrooms do you want? How many bathrooms do you want? Do you need a garage, pool? By the way, have you been pre-approved, right? Like that's kind of how most buyer consults go. Mm-hmm. Versus what we were saying is, again, motivation. Hey, Jose, I'm just curious, like what has you considering moving now? Where are you planning on going? What's important about where you go? What's important about the house that you figure out you want to buy? Let's pretend, it's 45 days from now and you've bought your house and you've got your housewarming party. What are you going to highlight to your friends and family about your home? Mm-hmm. Right? So this is the motivation, understanding what it is you want and why it's so important. So that's the motivation part. After that, when we're talking about sitting inside someone's home, there's 2 prices we got to figure out. First one, how much they want for their house, mm-hmm. right? Because some people are reasonable, some people are not. If they're unreasonable or they want too much for their house, we got to fix this right then and there. The second thing we got to negotiate is our fee. So we typically asked for 7% when we were running appointments. So you got to start negotiating it here before you go in for the signed contract, mm-hmm. right? So we got to go through setting proper expectations. understanding their motivation. And their motivation, this is going to be the longest part of the conversation. So understanding the motivations. After the motivations, we're going to have to negotiate pricing. That's just the way it is, right? We're in sales. And then after that, getting everything signed. And then before we leave, preventing remorse, making sure that they feel good about this conversation. Hey, Jose, just want to let you know, sometime between now and the next couple of weeks, you're going to wonder, by the way, it's totally normal. You're going to wonder if you made the right decision in working with us. That's okay. Just want to let you know that is totally normal. Everyone goes through it. So now in a couple of weeks, you're like, man, did I make the right decision? No, Steve said I was going to wonder that. So no, this is fine.
That's so funny. Now, is it different from a buying home perspective, or is it the same, very similar?
The process is the same. The word tracks are different, but the process is still ultimately the same.
Yeah. What is a word track?
So a word track is going to be, so let's talk about the pain and motivation, right? So word track is going to be, hey, Jose, why am I here? It's like, I'm dealing with some, my house is going to foreclosure. Tell me more about that. Yeah, my hours are getting cut back. Your hours are getting cut back. Yeah, things are down in the company. How long has that been going on? Well, it's been happening for about 4 months now. Really, 4 months. When's the last time your hours got cut back? Matter of fact, it was last week. Dang, man. How far behind are you on your house payments right now? $3,000. How do you feel about that? Who else knows about your foreclosure situation? What have you tried to fix it? Oh, you reach out to your parents? How'd that go? Not so well. What else have you tried? Try to get another job. How'd that go? That didn't work either. Man, it sounds like you're in a really tough situation here. What would happen if you can't get out of this? No, that's not an option. We got to fix this, right? So that's the motivation part on buying someone's house. Selling your house, right? Just listening. Hey, Jose, why are you selling your house? Well, I want to go and move to this other part of town. Oh, what's important about that part of town? It's closer to my mom. Oh, okay. What's important about being closer to your mom? Well, she can watch the kids. How long have you guys been thinking about, or tell me more about, her watching your kids? Well, I'm trying to get back to work, whatever, blah, 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 right? But it's the same set of questions, about why it's important, how long they've been thinking about it, and when's the last time they thought about it, and so on. But the conversation will steer very differently if we're buying their house versus selling their house with a realtor.
But it's still a similar process. What I was going to ask you is, and I think this is something that people wonder, is like, what is included, and I've thought this to myself, what is included in Steve Trang sales training?
So we talked about the process, right? What we do is we go really, really deep into each part of the process. And the reason why this is so important is that so many sales trainings out there, or a lot of what people find out there, if you go on YouTube or Instagram, whatever, is like, when they say this, say that. Here's how you overcome this objection. Here's how you come that objection. Here's how you overcome this objection, right? It's all talk tracks for specific scenarios. If that's your process, then whenever a homeowner says something, you've got to think about it for a second, and then you got it. It's not fluid. But if you have a framework, and that's what we really focus on, we focus on why we do what we do, and then how to execute it. Now there's no objection that can stump you, right? If you have a one-size-fits-all solution, a universal solution, there's no objection that you can't overcome. But if you don't have that, then you need to have like pages and pages of memorized scripts, right? What was it? Mike Ferry's, he's got the 40 objections, right? You got to memorize the 40 objections. And that's great. That works for those 40 objections. But what if you get an objection you haven't heard yet? Now you're stuck like a deer in headlights. But if you have a framework, a process for overcoming objections, now there should be no objections you shouldn't be able to overcome.
So what would you say a framework or a process for overcoming objections sound like?
So for the most part, you got to understand it, right? So you got to mirror it. So a lot of times someone says, for example, you charge too much, right? That's probably a very common objection to realtors, right? So the natural thing to say is like, well, here's why we charge so much, Jose. Look, I got to pay for the Matterport. I got a drones. I got a team. I got a broker split. I got to pay Uncle Sam. Like, you've heard these things, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's how mostly people say. Or like, hey, would you go with a realtor that can't negotiate their fee, right? Like, these are the typical objection handlings, right? But you say, Steve, let's role play this.
So,
right.
Steve,
So you tell me.
I think that your fee is a little high. Did you say 7%? That's a little high, isn't it?
A little high.
Yeah.
Oh, what are we hoping to hear?
I was hoping like lower. Like, what's the best that you're willing to do for us?
It sounds like what the commission you pay is really important.
100%.
Got it. Given the conversation we've had so far, you were saying it was really important that we put it in the LA Times, in this fancy magazine, having all the showings that occur, and having someone from my team show up there every single time we had a showing. It sounded like those things were really important to you.
Yeah, well, they are. Yeah.
Okay. Do you believe that those things will help you get more for your home?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. So, which one of those services would you like me to remove?
Well, the reason I'm saying that the fee is high is because I have other agents offering us 5%, and in one case, even a 4% agent. And I even Googled, like, hey, what's standard commission in Arizona? And for some reason, Google said it's anywhere from 5 to 6%. And they're all offering very similar things.
I'm sure they are. So the 4% guy, I mean, what did you tell that guy?
I told him I needed to talk to other agents still.
Okay. I mean, was there perhaps a little bit of doubt about whether he could do what you need him to do at 4%?
Well, I think the guy is not full time, which I think that's part of the reason he's offering at 4%. Yeah. So I think that there's a little bit of I don't know if I want to work with him, to be fully transparent.
Sure. Okay. So, I've been doing this for some time. Obviously, you already knew this. We're not the cheapest. You know that. But no, we're not the cheapest. You see how many homes we've sold and all those reviews we've gotten. When we surveyed those homeowners and asked them why they went with us, even though we weren't the cheapest, what do you suppose those other homeowners said?
I think they probably said because you guys have a good track record, probably.
Yeah, exactly. So knowing that we have a good track record, that sounds like it's important to you.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So is it more important to you to pay 2% less in commission, or is it more important to you to sell your house for more money in a timeline we discussed?
The thing is, like, I mean, I think my house is extremely beautiful. Like, it's gonna sell itself, right? Like, meaning, like,
it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it's gonna sell itself, right? I mean, I've got like the corner lot, I've got the upgraded kitchen, I've got the pool. Like, so I think that no matter who lists it, I'm gonna end up with the same price. Yet, in your situation, I'm gonna pay 7% versus 5%.
Yeah. Hey, look, I totally get it because you do have a beautiful home.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the only thing you believe we're responsible for then is for just selling your home.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, has there ever been a scenario where, I don't know, you bought a product and then when it was time to deal with whatever challenges, maybe it didn't work or there were some obstacles and all you got was tech support and you couldn't get your questions answered?
Yeah, that's happened.
Yeah. So do you think if you're dealing with a discount realtor, they're going to be able to answer all your questions in the time you need them answered?
Well, I don't think that the 4% guy would do that, but maybe the 5 or 6% person I think would.
Sure. And I get that. So you asked us to come over today for a very particular reason.
Correct.
What was that reason?
We wanted to see what you had to offer.
So you just want to see what we had to offer?
Mm-hmm.
And now that you know what we had to offer, how are you feeling?
Well, I like you guys. I'm just hoping there's a little bit of wiggle room for us.
Okay. What kind of wiggle room are you looking for?
I was hoping that you would do 5%. I mean, if you would do 5%, Steve, you've got the business right now.
So it sounds like you're leaning towards us.
100%.
Okay. But it's really, so there's a reason specifically you're leaning towards us.
Well,
I'm just curious what that is.
Record. It's the track record for sure. Like I've read your
How-
guys' reviews.
And what does that tell you?
Well, it tells us that you guys do a good job, but like even at a 2% extra, that's like an extra at a $500,000 home. That's like an extra $10,000. Like I'm kind of questioning, like, is it worth the $10,000, or could I save $10,000?
Sure. Now you're moving with your wife, and you're going across. You're moving to another state.
Correct.
You already have the home you're gonna be buying.
Yes, we do.
How important is it to know that this other house you're buying, that this house will 100% be sold?
It's extremely important.
What if it doesn't work out? How much stress are you going to feel?
It probably caused some inconveniences in my marriage. I'd probably have to stay here a little bit longer. My wife would be out in Tennessee by herself, looking hot.
But that's not a big deal.
No, it's a big deal, 100%.
Okay. So it sounds like someone that can get the job done in the time you need it is important.
100%.
Okay. So is that more important, that you can get this done? You don't have to worry about any stress with your wife? Or are we really worried about a percent here and there?
It's very important that we get the job done. Very important.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's how it would go, but like, but you see, like,
honest, I loved it. I loved it, and the reason I loved it is you almost even got into character as well too. It was just kind of like, and even the way that you say things, like when you repeat and approve, like it's very subtle, yet. So I'm curious, what was the talk track behind that? What was the framework behind that objection handler?
So there's a few different things, right? So I got you. I did quite a bit of mirroring, right?
Okay.
I got you to tell me what's important to you. You know, when we asked all those other homeowners why they went with us, even though we weren't the cheapest, what do you suppose they said? You said track record. Okay, that's exactly what they said. No matter what you say, that's exactly what they said. Right? That's kind of what we do when we ask them, what other people say. Because who knows what's important to you? You do, right? So I said, man, it sounds like track record is really important to you. What's important about a good track record? And you told me more about that. So you're telling me all these things are important to you, right? And then the 4%, that's pretty easy because like you already, in this particular role play, you indicated you had no respect for the 4% guy. So I just kind of needled all of that, right? It's like, yeah, obviously that 4% guy's out. So we're not talking about the 4. Like, I don't know why you brought up the 4. Let's just take that guy off the table. Really, we're talking about 5 or 7.
Yeah.
Right. And then you were focused on money, and I had to move it away from money. And so what I moved it to is like, let's talk about what happens if you go with someone with a less stellar track record and they fail to get the job done. How is that going to impact you and your family? And you're talking about, okay, so my wife's over there, I'm over here, I'm hearing it from her, all these other things. Okay, well, is that worth $10,000? That's up to you to figure out, right? That's not up to me to figure out. That's up to you to figure out. And so that's what we went through on that role play.
Got it. So when you say framework, you're talking about like mirror and matching. That's one of the frameworks. Do you, in your framework,
bringing the stress in here, bringing emotions into this?
That's, if you wanted to teach somebody how to handle that objection, would it be handled the same exact way every single time, or
not every single time? The framework was a lot of mirroring, figuring out what's really important to you, right? And then showing you how we do that and how that affects you and how that what you just said was important to you. Now I had you decide whether 10,000 is more important or the track record is more important, right? But you decided that. I didn't decide this, right? I could say, Jose, you should go with me because I sell more houses than anybody else, and that's why you should pay me 7. Yeah. You can be like, I don't give a shit, Steve. Like, that's not, I don't care. But when I had you tell me what was important to you, and you tell me, okay, well, is that worth $10,000 or not? That's a question for you to figure out,
Mm-hmm.
You might figure out, it's like, no, that's not important to me. Okay, great. I'm not your guy.
Got it. So, in Steve Trang's trainings, is it like a weekly thing? Is it a daily thing? What does that look like? Is
It's
it
not
on the
daily.
computer, or what does it look like as of today?
So it really depends on which
Program.
tier you want to go through, right? Because we have our weekly training, right? That's our higher ticket. We have our live events, and then we have our sales community. And our sales community, that's in Discord, and it comes with all my previously recorded courses. And we have weekly trainings in there as well. So we have weekly training in there in our community. It's just I'm not the one that's doing it. It's someone else that's every bit as good as I am.
Mm-hmm.
He just doesn't have the brand. So he runs the training. I do the weekly trainings. That's our higher ticket item. And then we have our live events, $2,500, $3,000 in our office, 2 full days inside our office.
I love it. I love it. Good. Now, do you ever find that compensation helps in hiring good salespeople? And what's the best way to compensate salespeople?
So I think there's a couple different things. I think you got to have a standard, right? I know when I was running my team, there was a time where I was running a high performing team. We didn't talk about this. So my best year, I was number 38 out of 45,000 realtors in the Phoenix market, right? So there was a time where I was running a high performing team. When I was doing that, I was paying for all the marketing, TC, signs, photos, whatever, right? In that model, I was paying the listing agent 35%. What did they have to do? They had to go out there, get the business, and do the Tuesday update calls, right? That's basically what they had to do. Buyer agents, we paid them 50%. They had to be out there, and man, showing sucks. Like listing,
Phoenix,
you go out
even
there,
more.
even more in Phoenix, right? So listings, you go out there one time, maybe twice, right? Showings, you're always out in the field. So we pay 50-50 on buyers agents. So that's what we did. But I think a more important question really is, what does the realtor want? And so you've got to look at, there's a risk in running a compensation model based off other people's business models. And what I mean by that is we have someone in town, is Russell Shaw, right? This guy's been a top 30 realtor for 40 freaking years. Mm-hmm. His compensation model is a little bit different, should be different, because he's spending $80,000 a month or something crazy on TV, right? That guy is going to have a different compensation model than where maybe the middle of the pack realtor who's doing 3 to 5 contracts a month versus the guy that's looking to hire his first realtor on his team. Right? The guy looking to hire his first realtor on a team is not going to get away with 35% or 50-50. Right? It's going to be harder for him to command that because he's not spending enough on marketing. He might not have a TC. He might not have, or if he has a TC, he might not have, the processes dialed in to make sure that all that listing agent has to do is talk to the seller just a few times and then the weekly calls. So I think the compensation model is something you got to be careful with. You have to figure out what's important to the realtor, how much they want to make, and figure out how you can make sure your business model supports that. And then, you have to look at what you're able to support. Like, can you feed a guy? Let's just say, like, it's funny because you look at the wholesale side, 10% is normal for acquisition managers, right? That's the guy that's going to buy houses. But listing agents, you tell a listing agent, hey, you're going to get 10%, they'll shoot you, right? It's just not going to happen. So it really is highly dependent on what kind of your average fee is, your average commission, plus your marketing and process is how many deals you can consistently do for a realtor that you bring into the team.
What's normal for a disposition agent? Just out of curiosity.
Dispositions, we're typically seeing somewhere between 5 to 8%, closer to the 8% than the 5. But again, it depends on the volume your team's doing.
I love it. Good. Now, in terms of like keeping people motivated and keeping salespeople like motivated, what do you recommend in that situation? And does your training provide anything, any sales contests or anything like that to help keep people motivated?
Yeah. So let me tell you what doesn't work. Screaming at the guys, right? That's we see that. Telling them what to do, right? Going back to the autonomy earlier in the role play. Hey, Jose, what's more important to $10,000 or making sure you're there with your wife when you guys are done, right? Like, what's more important to you? It's the same thing here. If I'm telling you, you need to make these calls, you need to have this many contracts and all these other things, I'm dictating to you, and your desire for autonomy will rebel against that. Mm-hmm. So in order to get you motivated, I'm going to say, Jose, how much money do you need to make? Great. Okay, you need to make $150,000 a year, right? You're in LA. That makes sense. That might even go very far, right? You're middle class in LA. All right, so 150 grand a year. Okay, so 150 grand a year. Your average commission in LA, I don't know, 20,000, 25,000.
Yeah.
So you have to do basically a deal and a half every single month. Month in, month out, you need to do a deal and a half, right? Okay. So if you don't want to do a deal and a half, here's the body of work we know is required. We know you need to have 7 to 10 A clients ready to move in the next 30 to 60 days at all times inside your pipeline. Mm-hmm. In order to do that, you need to be prospecting. You need to be on the phones, talking to your sphere, calling all the leads, doing the follow-up, talking to all the sellers you talked to in the past. You're going to be on the phones at least 2 hours every single day. Are you prepared? To make this 150K, are you prepared to be on the phones for 2 hours a day? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to get commitment from you. All right, Jose, there's going to come a day where we're going to sit down, I'm going to look down, I'm going to see like, hey, you haven't hit your 10 hours of prospecting this week. Mm-hmm. When that happens, how would you like me to approach you with this conversation? And now you've told me how to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
Right. But what have we done? We had a conversation about what you need. Oh, I missed the most important step. Why is it important? Why do you need to make 150? What's important about that? What can you do when you're making 150,000 a year? I can finally move to a nicer neighborhood. I can finally, put my kids in private school. My wife can quit her job. Okay. So we talk about what you need to make, why it's important you make that amount of money, the body of work required to do that. Are you willing to commit to that body of work? How would you like me to hold you accountable? Right? That's a little different than, Jose, hey, you're not hitting the phones. What's going on? You have nothing in your pipeline. Like, are you serious about this job?
That's true. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Where do you find good salespeople?
So right now, the way we're finding good salespeople, our best people really is through referrals. So that's our best. But beyond that, Wise Hire. We've been having some pretty good luck with Wise Hire.
Got it. Okay. So what's the most challenging thing that you would say about managing salespeople?
What it used to be was holding them accountable. Now we have a framework and process for that. So right now, I guess commitment to the training, but now we learned that too, right? Like, hey, asking for commitment to the training. So we're always evolving and getting better, right? We're always reading books, learning from our peers that are having success. So right now, the greatest challenge with salespeople is we don't have enough of them at this exact moment.
Mm-hmm. How often should a salesperson be trained?
Every day, if you can. If you can do every day, it should be every day. And I look at it this way, right? So you're in LA. So I hated Kobe Bryant for the longest time, right? And then one day I'm reading ESPN, the magazine, right? Back when that was popular. And I was like, this guy makes 2,000 jumpers every day in the off season. He goes to the gym and he shoots until he makes 2,000 jumpers every single day. And that was where the quote came from. It's like, you're selfish. Why don't you pass the ball? He's like, how can I trust anyone else that doesn't work as hard in their craft as I do? Mm-hmm. It's not an unfair statement, right? And so the best paid people on the planet practice every single day. They're watching game tape. They're getting coaching. They're reviewing reviewing game tape. They're listening to their calls. They're studying. They're reading. They're watching training, coaching, whatever. The best paid people on the planet practice every day. I would argue salespeople should do the same. We have the opportunity to not just make doctor money. We have the opportunity to make athlete money. Now, when I say athlete, I'm talking about kickers, right? I'm not talking about quarterbacks. But a kicker's still an athlete.
So, what should somebody do to practice every day? What does a practice routine consist for a salesperson?
I believe if you look at your greatest challenge where you're consistently struggling, you can just focus on that, right? If you're consistently focused on, need to think about it, just practice with a peer in your office, ideally, right? Maybe Zoom. Just get that objection over and over and over again. You know, like this role play we did a moment ago with commissions.
Yeah.
That was off the cuff. I haven't practiced this in a while, right? But I've practiced it so many times in the past that it's there for recall when we need it.
100%. It's like almost like it. If you've shot thousands of jumpers in your life and you're asked to shoot a jumper, you're more than likely going to have that muscle memory all over again. Great. I've enjoyed this interview tremendously, Steve. Is there anything else that you think would add value to people as it relates to sales training? And then if somebody saw value in today's interview, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
The best way to get in contact with us is just through disruptors.com. That's where all our offerings are. Or you can go to my Instagram at steve.trang. I provide sales tips almost every day on my Instagram. So as far as anything that we didn't talk about that would be valuable, I think that just to embrace the fact that there's a process, because one of the things that's hard, what I've seen with salespeople is everyone thinks they're good at sales. Mm-hmm. Just embrace the fact that there is a sales process that's optimal that will make you more money if you will embrace it. It might be really simple, but it's so hard to get people to embrace it.
Yeah, I've got a guy that I tell him, like, hey, look, like, you're so naturally gifted, but he won't. He's a venture, so zero.
Yeah, that's good.
Great. And then you do have a podcast, Steve. If somebody wanted to watch the podcast, I know that you interview some amazing guests. How do they find that?
Yeah, so it's Real Estate Disruptors on YouTube or on iTunes and Spotify for podcasts. Real Estate Disruptors.
I love it. So I want to say thank you, Steve, for taking the time to be on the show. For our viewers today, we had Steve Trang. We talked about Steve Trang sales training. So this is an all-inclusive video. Maybe in the future we can do another role play. But I want to say thank you, guys. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you feel that this episode will be helpful, make sure to hit that share button. Thank you again, Steve. And to our viewers, until next time.